How's it going, everybody? Happy Wednesday, January 14th. The weather is fantastic where I'm at right now. I'm in the Midwest. But I just kind of wanted to talk about a really awesome time in my life when I was in my late teens and I taught myself guitar, pretty much exclusively using YouTube. Um, it was, I feel like, when you're in your late teens like that and, even when you're like a toddler, I think that's the reason why it's easier to learn like a new language when you're a baby as opposed to, when you're an adult. But like, when and I feel like, your brain is like going through changes, in your late teens like that. I've read that somewhere too, but like I don't have the facts to back it up, so I'm not gonna say like, oh, that is the case. But I think that was a huge reason why I was able to learn the guitar as quickly as I did. That and then also just like really idolizing Bob Dylan. I don't like to use the word idol, but like I think when you really like something, say for instance like if you're someone who is really fond of like a particular like painter or something, you may learn how to paint because of that one person. And in this case, I learned an instrument, because of Bob Dylan. And if it wasn't for him, I 100%, would have never picked up the guitar. Um, I the reason I even got into him in the first place was because at the time I was working at a bookstore, and I remember seeing this giant book he had. It was like one of those coffee table books that you find, in someone's coffee table in their house. Um, it's like a conversation piece really, but I remember thinking to myself like there's no way like this guy's got this many songs, and they're not all garbage. And then and then so like from there I got my guitar. And It was kind of funny. I sold all my video games at the time. This was around 2012. I was in my late teens, coming up on I think 18 or 19. This was before I had ever drank. I still had never even picked up a bottle of alcohol, and I sold all my video games and I bought a guitar off of Craigslist. And then from there, I just pretty much was like practicing every single day. I mean, like before school, when I got up in the morning, I would be practicing the guitar. When I got off of school, whenever just anytime I had free time, I can remember trying to play "Blowing in the Wind" like right before school. My senior year, and to me that was like a huge goal. It was like I had to learn that song. Um, and I eventually did learn it. It kind of sucks. I got married at 22, and it's really my fault. I think that I was like too young and immature to get married. I kind of wanted to like hurry up and grow up. But I think getting married, led to me, a lot of stress that I didn't know how to handle. I think it's important for me to, not blame the other person. And I think that's important just in life in general to like, you need to be able to admit when you're wrong. It's a problem when you can't do that. And, but anyway, I felt like I was it was just really stressful and I didn't know how to handle it, and the way I handled it was by drinking all the time. And then I also like, because of that I stopped practicing the guitar as often. So and this was and I just say all that to say like, it's not like the marriage's fault that I stopped playing guitar or that I started drinking or et cetera, et cetera. It's just my own fault. I didn't know how to handle stress. But that segues into, like I said, just you need to. I think it's important for we as people, to admit when we're wrong. I mean, for me, I don't have the energy to argue with people. It's like to me, it's kind of pointless. Like I don't want to sit here and like argue my point, especially if like you're not gonna change somebody's mind. Especially in like the climate we live in today. Like you're not changing anybody's mind. All you can do is just say how you feel, and then just kind of go from there. Um, you know, but uh, but that just kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where like a lot of times in any disagreement, a lot of times if I am wrong, and a lot of times that is the case. I just go ahead and like, hey man, this is my bad. I messed up. How can we get past it? I mean, I think I have a lot of friends who do like MMA and like fighting and whatnot, and they kind of want me to get into boxing. And like I would love to get into boxing. I'm just not like that kind of person, you know. Like I'm the kind of person who like, you know, I want to like I'll fight if I have to, sure. You know, I have two kids at the end of the day, so I have to, you know, I have to be down for that. But you know, I'm not someone who like is that's like my first like go-to, you know, I like I said, I just think it's so important to admit when you're wrong. Or maybe I think that's because like growing up, that was my problem with like adults, you know, because something would happen, I'd be like I don't mind, just say my bad, say I'm sorry, or say I was wrong. And I don't know. And as a kid, obviously, I'm not gonna argue with you know the people who are taking care of me, or at least that's how I was raised. Um, so like even with my kid, you know, if like I'm wrong in a situation, you know, I'll tell my daughter, hey, I was, you know, I think I was probably wrong in that situation. I apologize. Um, but you know, like I said, getting back to like you know the guitar and everything, I just I think that's like just having a hobby like that is really important. I would love to get back into practicing. Um, like I have said before, probably in you know on video or to my friends, you know, it's just it only gets harder as you get older. You know, like these days, you know, I like to sit, like, you know, go, you know, right now I'm kind of like in between jobs. I'm waiting to start this job. But, you know, I've just been playing a lot of video games. You know, I haven't been practicing guitar. I haven't really even been going outside. Um, you know, which probably isn't like very positive. You know, I think like when you get outside and you get sunshine, like that's a positive thing. I try to like stay away from, you know, on that same note, going outside, touching grass, getting sunshine. You know, I try to put my phone down a lot of the times. I don't know like how much of a difference it makes whenever I put my phone down and then I'm just like sitting here on the computer. You know, I still have a blue screen in front of my face. Last night, you know, I tried sleeping with the TV off for the first time in weeks. And, you know, I can't, I don't know whether or not to say that I slept better or worse. Um, I woke up pretty well rested. And so maybe that is like a case of, you know, the benefits of sleeping with the TV off. You know, I'm also not giving YouTubers free views. No, I'm just kidding. I because I just pretty much exclusively watch YouTube. Like I don't have any type of streaming services. I don't have, you know, I could go through the list of streaming services there are, but I don't know them all and I don't have them, so it really doesn't matter. But but yeah, I just wanted to kind of get on here and just kind of talk about that. You know, the biggest points are just like I think in your late teens, it's way easier to learn stuff. I think that's why like you know, in being a firefighter, you know, I worked with a lot of young guys who are 21, 22 years old. And you know they're just so motivated, and I kind of sit here and think like, where do you get the energy for this? But I think that's just a product of like, you know, when you're that age, you have the drive and motivation to do things. And I think if you apply that into something, you know, in my case, it was the guitar. And I wish I would have taken it a lot further than I did. But, you know, I would say just, seize, you know, if you have a passion for something, dude, take it all the way. I mean, I have my EMT right now, and my goals are to get my paramedic. You know, why would I want to stay at the bottom of the, you know, at the bottom of the pay grade? You know, I want to move up. I want to get out at, you know, pay scale. But I mean, anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to get on here and talk about today was just, you know, the fact that like, you know, I taught myself guitar. You know, I overcame alcoholism. You know, and if I can do that, you know, I can pretty much do anything I set my mind to do, which is like, you know, this whole YouTube deal. You know, I want to continue to do this, and you know, I want to connect with people. I like love when people comment on the videos. It's like euphoric. It's like a little dopamine hit. But anyway, I appreciate everybody, man, and I hope you guys all have a great day. Later.